Welcome back to another episode of the Wilderness Fitness Podcast. Tonight, I am your host, Dr. Rob Minturn. I'm doing this much later than usual, so I apologize for those who are waiting around for 8:30. But I wanted to get on tonight and do this before tomorrow morning. So tonight, we're talking about solo adventure safety. So communication, planning, and fitness. Those are the three aspects that I'm going to go talk about tonight. Three roads that we're going to go down tonight. When it comes to solo adventures, this can apply to solo hunting as well, and it can even be applied to group hunting because your group is only as strong as its weakest link, and you don't want to be the weakest link. So some of these aspects can be applied to group hunting as well. But before I do that, I want to go over the Spicy Saturday workout. Justin's got another doozy lined up. It looks simple when you look at it, but it's definitely going to be getting the heart rate up, so it should be good. You're going to do 5 rounds for time. So you're doing just 2 movements, I guess 3 movements technically, but two movements on the list here, and you're going to do that for time. So you're trying to get through that as quickly as you can. The first one being a burpee box jump, and the second one being a deadlift. So you can do a traditional deadlift, you can do a hex bar deadlift, kind of whatever you have available. But the reps for that they're going to be 5 burpee box jumps and 5 deadlifts. All right. So burpee box jump, you're going to do a burpee in front of a box, and then you're going to jump onto a 24-inch box for the men and a 20-inch box for the ladies. This is the RX. The deadlift weight is going to be 225 for the men and 155 for the ladies. For the scaled movements, instead of doing a burpee box jump, you're just going to do a box jump, all right? And then the reps are going to be the same. So you're going to do five box jumps and 5 deadlifts. And then for the scaled version of the workout, you're going to use a 20-inch box instead of a 24-inch box for the guys. The weights also bump down a little bit with the deadlift. So you're going to do 205 for the men and 135 for the ladies. Now, I got a question about this last week. You don't have to scale everything back. So if you have issues with your wrists, you can just do a box jump, but you can also do a 24-inch box with 225, right? Or you can do a box jump with 225 and a 20-inch box. So you can mix and match the scaled movements. You don't necessarily have to just do the scaled motion or the scaled movements with a scaled prescription or the RX prescription. You can mix and match that. All right. Just be sure that you write that stuff down and track it, so that way you when you come back to it maybe next year, you're able to look back and see what you're able to do and then compare and contrast as far as the progress that you're making. So, all right. Without further ado, let's get into the podcast. So, communication. Over the years, I know I've driven my parents nuts with my inability to communicate as well as I probably should have, where I'm at, when I'm at, what my plan is, the whole 9 yards. It's something that I've definitely gotten better at, especially being by myself the last couple of years and going up into the mountains by myself, especially out in Wyoming. So communication is going to be key. It's not just communicating with loved ones, right? So with me, for example, being in Wyoming, all my family's back in Wisconsin. I don't have, if something happens, yes, they know where I'm at, but what the hell are they going to do back in Wisconsin, right? So I've been blessed to spend some time in each of the states that I've traveled to just because of my contracts. So in those areas, I let my landlord know, and I let maybe maybe 1 or 2 other friends know, so that way in the event that something does happen, and I even share contact information with those people, so that way everybody's on the same page, because you never know, like a simple day hike could turn into a catastrophic event. So communicate with people in the area. If you don't know anyone in the area, you're going to a new place to hunt, you're going to a new place to backpack, it's not a bad idea to communicate with the rangers in the area. Contact the National Forest, contact maybe Game and Fish, let them know what's going on. It's always better to over-communicate than it is to under-communicate. Let your loved ones know where you're going to be, what your plan is. In the event that something happens, they can call into the Game and Fish or the National Forest. But it's always good to give people specifics, but then let people in the area know, so that way they have a good place to start, and people in the area are going to know the mountains a little bit better than what your family is back east or back west, wherever they're at. Satellite communication, got the Garmin InReach that makes it super easy to communicate. This year, it would have been very handy for all 4 people to have one. Again, as a solo adventure, have one in your on your backpack or on your bino harness, or whatever you're going to use. That's going to be with you most, like 99% of the time. It doesn't do you a hell of a lot of good if your satellite phone is on your backpack and you dropped your pack to go stalk an animal, and now you're 100 yards from your pack and you fell and broke a leg. That's not going to do you any good. So it's not a bad idea to have it on your bino harness. But satellite communications, again, those easy texts, those easy check-ins, get those set up before you leave. My 2 emergency contact numbers are, it's usually a buddy from home, and then it's a friend of mine who lives out in California. I know she doesn't really get into the Western style of like backpacking and hunting and all that, but I know if shit hit the fan, she's going to be able to figure out who needs to get contacted and when, and she's going to get the ball rolling. So she's one of my emergency contact folks. So you need to have people like that in your life that you can count on, that at a moment's notice they're able to get things into motion, and have that stuff set up before you go. Set that up when you don't need it, so that way when you need it, you have it available. Planning for the weather. So something that, again, I haven't been great at, but usually I just make it up as I go. But the last few years with the elk hunts being up there for so long, it's been something that I've had to pay more attention to. NOAA forecast, NOAA forecast, is something that was introduced to me a couple years ago from a buddy who does a bunch of backcountry snowboarding. And they have to be very mindful of the weather when they're doing that, as far as avalanche safety and storms coming in. They don't want to be at the top of a peak and have to snowboard down in a blizzard. And it's come in handy very frequently, especially this last year with some hail and snow and rain coming into the mountains in southern Colorado when I was out there. Again, communicate with folks back in service. If you're going to be on a long backpacking trip, that NOAA app, or if you use it online, it's only good for about 3 days. So the first 3 days are going to be super accurate. After that, it's going to be kind of hit and miss. So it's not a bad idea to have someone have someone back in service communicate with you every 2 days or every 3 days, a new weather update, and keep it short and sweet, but a new weather update every 2 or 3 days, depending on how long you're going to be gone for. Planning for a pack out. So I usually bring extra water. I've got a 4-liter dromedary that goes with me on top of my 1-liter Nalgene that goes with me, and I don't need that much water in a day. But again, if you kill a bull, or if you're on a backpacking trip and you get stuck down in this hole and you have a 3 or 4 mile hike back to camp, 5 mile hike back to camp, having a little bit of extra water never hurt anybody. That extra 2.2 pounds per liter is not going to kill you as far as hiking around with that all day. So having some extra water with you is something that I err on the side of overhydration versus underhydration. Again, that 2 pound is not anything that's going to make or break your pack at the end of the day. So being or having enough hydration for sure. And then food. So, and this could go for a pack out. This could go for really anything towards the end of the day. You ran out of food. It was an extra strenuous day, more strenuous than what you thought it was going to be. Maybe the incline that you thought was going to be easy, you hit it late, you're in the sun, you had to take more breaks, so now you're out longer. Having an extra food source, an extra source of calories that's stuffed in someplace in your pack that you forget about, so that way you're not tempted to get to it. It's kind of like a safety or the emergency fund as far as the financial thing goes. And you have that in your pack, and it just stays in that pack. And the only time that you ever have to bring that out is if you kill something, you're out of food, or you're on a backpacking trip, you're out of food, and you have another couple hours to go to hike. That's when that emergency food source comes out. Have it be something that's got quite a few carbohydrates, maybe a little bit of fat, but you want mostly carbohydrates, something that's easy to digest, something that's going to be simple for you to utilize. Hopefully not a ton of water, because you don't want to use up all your water stores. But for me, it was a Peak Refuel granola packet. So I think there was like 550 or 650 calories in that. So it was going to be enough to where if we got something down on the elk hunt at the end of the day when I was completely out of food, it was going to get me through that evening up until we could at least get back to spike camp or back to the trucks to where I could then refuel with actual food. So having that extra food source and overhydrating or overpacking your hydration is definitely something to consider when you're doing solo adventures, and if you're hiking in a group, so that way you're not having to ration out water and food if you guys kill something. And then the biggest safety net of all, the biggest aspect as far as solo adventures goes is your fitness. It is hands down the most important safety net that you could have. It is hands down the hardest safety net to develop. If you have great fitness, you can get out of a lot of shitty scenarios. If you're packed in, you packed in for 5 days, and someone, I'll use our group this year for example. We packed in. It was only 3 miles, and we weren't even to camp yet. We had, I think, a third of a mile or a half a mile to camp where we were going to set up from the year before. And one of our guys got dizzy, lightheaded, puked, shitting his brains out. Was not a good scenario. He was able to make it to camp. Got to camp, was worthless all of camp. Not that he's any good for anything anyway, but he might be listening to this. But not that he's good for anything anyway, but he, when he got to camp, he had to lay down, get his feet up in the air, couldn't really drink water, couldn't eat. It was not a good scenario. And we had just gotten to camp, and we were going to hopefully be packed in for 5 days. So the fitness side of things, was prepared. He was prepared, but he wasn't prepared well enough to handle the stressors of the elevation, of the up and down, of the heavy pack. He just wasn't used to it. So that put the group in a situation where we had to decide what we were going to do as far as the plan to get him out, if we had to get him out or if he was going to stay. But if you pack in and then something happens and you have to immediately pack back out, are you going to be able to do that? Can you do that with all of your gear again and get back to the truck and get off the mountain if there's a snowstorm coming in? Another example would be an old patient of mine, an old client of mine that's gone through this. This last year, he was hunting up in the Unlimiteds, and I forget how far he was packed in. I want to say it was 13 or 14 miles packed in, set up camp at the top of the mountain at the Glassing Knob, and InReach wasn't working. There was a lightning storm. It was just a bad scenario, and he decided to get off the mountain himself. He wasn't able to do any InReach comms, and come to find out there was a giant snowstorm coming in. So he had the fitness capability to pack all his stuff in, and had to pack everything up and put it in his backpack and pack it all the way back out to the truck and then get off the mountain. Having the ability to do that, having the fitness to do that can be a lifesaver, not just for you, but everybody else in your group, just because of the fact that if you're not able to do it, then someone else in the group is going to have to take more weight. Someone else in the group, you might have to leave some stuff behind, but it puts others at risk if you don't have the physical preparedness to handle the strenuous activity of packing in and packing out. It's not just cardio, it's strength as well, it's mental grit as well, but the fitness side of things is definitely, honestly, the largest safety net that you can have. The larger your fitness capability, the larger the safety net. It can get you out of some pretty hairy scenarios just for the simple fact that you're able to physically handle the stress that's being applied to you. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys. It wasn't too long, but I just wanted to go over some solo safety adventure stuff that I try to practice myself. It was actually a request from an old client of mine to go over some solo stuff, so I wanted to cover that tonight. But if you guys have any questions, go ahead and reach out, shoot me a message on Instagram, or reach out info@wildernesspt.com. But you guys have a great weekend and enjoy the last weekend of January. Peace. Hey, thank you for tuning in to the Wilderness Fitness Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please head over to your podcast app and consider leaving a review. If you think a friend or a family member may benefit from listening to this podcast, please consider sharing this episode with them. We appreciate your help in the growth of this podcast.
Check us out on Facebook and Instagram for even more content and the weekly Hump Day Q&A, where you can get all of your human performance, rehab, women's health, and injury prevention questions answered. If you're interested in getting hooked up with even more content from Wilderness PT from the comfort of your own home, head over to wildernessphysicaltherapy.com and get signed up for the Spike Camp membership. This is where you'll have access to prior seminars and a workout that'll have you in shape each fall, designed by yours truly. Since you're there, check out the mid-month media newsletter that goes out 1 to 2 times a month, which includes a variety of topics with the most recent research on health and human performance. You can sign up by hovering over the free resources section and subscribe to any of the free guides, or simply sign up under the mid-month media newsletter tab.